All right, guys, today's learning target is writing slope-intercept form equations when given a point and a slope. Also, we're going to be writing slope-intercept form equations when given 2 points of a line, okay? So let's start this lesson. We're going to be writing equations. And what kind of equations are we going to be writing? We're going to be writing the y equals mx plus b equations that we've been using to graph. So anyways, let's start this thing by stating this fact. And this is straight from the board. And the fact that I want to state is, in order to write an equation in slope-intercept form, you need two things. You need the m and you need the b. You need the m and you need the b. That's the only way you're going to be able to write it in slope-intercept form. This is slope-intercept form right here. So if you know that the slope is 3 and the y-intercept is 4, then you could say that the equation is y equals 3x plus 4. Or maybe you have a slope of 1/2 and the b value of 5. Then it would be y equals 1/2 x plus 5, right? Or maybe you have a slope of 2/3 and it crosses the y-axis at 0. Then you could say y equals 2/3 x plus 0. Or you could just say y equals 2/3 x and not even write the plus 0. So we know slope-intercept form. We've been using it to graph. We graph by understanding where the b is at, and then from that point rising and running according to your slope. What else do we know about slope-intercept form? We know how to calculate the slope with the slope formula. And of course, we already know that the b value is really the y-intercept location. Anyhow, once again, let me reiterate. To write an equation in slope-intercept form, you need two things. What are those two things? You need the slope and you need the b, the y-intercept. Keep that in mind. Okay. So let's check out this one right here. Number 1 on the class opener. We're going to start with super easy questions, all right? Straightforward. You already know that you need the m and you need the b to write an equation. It says write the equation of the line that has the m2 and the b3. How easy could it get, right? Slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. What is m? M is 2. Of course, the slope always goes with x, and the plus 3 is the b value. So that's why we put plus 3 at the very end. There's your equation. We're done. Yep. Number 2, write an equation of the line that has the slope 4 and the y-intercept 5. You see, it's the same thing as number 1, but instead of m, I tell you that the slope is 4, and instead of b equaling 3, I tell you that the y-intercept, the b, is 5. So let's write it once again. Y equals mx. M is, of course, your slope. So you really have 4 with an x. The slope is always in front of x. And the y-intercept, that's the b value. So you put plus 5. So there's your answer, your equation in slope-intercept form. Y equals 4x plus 5. And that's what we're doing all day today. We're writing equations in slope-intercept form. Of course, it gets more fun. Number 3. Again, straightforward. Write the equation of the line that has the slope, that's your m value, and the b value is 4, your y-intercept value. So your equation is going to be y equals mx plus b. Y equals, the m is 3/2, and the slope is always with x, and plus b, but your b is 4, so there's your slope-intercept form equation.
Super easy.
Super easy. Number 4, write the equation of the line that has the y-intercept of 1/2 and the slope of -5. A lot of people mess up right here because they see the fraction and they think that it's rise over run. But keep in mind, you have to read and pay attention to what you're reading. It says y-intercept is 1/2 and the slope is -5. So what's the actual equation? Y equals what? -5 with an x. Remember, the slope is always with the x. And the b value is the number that's being added or subtracted at the very end. In this case, added, and it's a 1/2. So you don't have to have whole numbers, right, or integers. I mean, you could have fractions. You could have rational numbers. This is not standard form. It's slope-intercept form. Moving on, number 5. Write an equation of a line that crosses the y-axis at -3 and has no slope. So right here, it would be a good idea to either have a visual or to go back to the most important part of today, that you need two things. You need an m and you need a b. If you have those two things, you'll be able to write the equation. So do we have an m? What is the slope? It has no slope. So what do we put for slope? What is the m value? 0, right? That's the m. How about the b value? Do we know where it crosses the y-axis? Yeah, it tells us it crosses at -3. Now, we do have both m and b, and that's all we need. So what's our equation going to be? Y equals 0x minus 3. Now, of course, the better answer, the better equation, 0 times x, that means that there is no x. So the better equation will be y equals -3. And that is an equation that's in slope-intercept form. Your slope is 0, your y-intercept is -3. Let's move on to number 6. Write the equation of the line that crosses the x-axis at 3 and crosses the y-axis at -2. Once again, we need two things. We need an m and we need a b. Okay? So let's find both of those. Do they give us the m? Does this say the slope is this? It doesn't say slope is 5. It doesn't say slope is -2. So they don't even give us a slope. Do they give us the y-intercept? Yeah, they give us the y-intercept. What's the y-intercept? -2. It crosses the y-axis at -2. Okay, so far we have half of what we need. We need the slope, though. And the only way to get the slope is to actually have a visual in your head or draw a visual out for this situation. So let's get a visual here. It crosses the x-axis at 3. So x, go to 3, put a dot right there. And then it crosses the y-axis at -2. So if it crosses at those 2 points, then it's obvious that our line is right through those 2 points. So now that we have a visual of that line, do we have a slope? What is the slope? From one point to another, from here, what do I do to go up and over to get to here? Positive what? 2 over +3. So what's the slope? 2/3. So the slope is 2/3. So now that we know the slope and now that we know the y-intercept, we could write the equation y equals 2/3 x minus 2. You with me?
Yeah.
Okay. So again, you always want the m and you always want the b. If you have those two things, it's really easy to write the equation. So moving on to number 7, write the equation of the line that crosses the x-axis at 2 and crosses the y-axis at -4. Once again, you need a visual. So I drew a quick graph right there. It crosses the y-axis at -4, which is down here. It crosses the x-axis at 2, which is up here. And now you know that if it crosses at those two locations, your line is going perfectly through those 2 points. So now you could actually visualize it and see the slope of it. What's the slope? How much do you go up? How much do you go over? You go up 4 over 2. So your slope, even though your slope is rise 4, run 2, you could reduce it. What's your slope really? 2 over 1. And it's okay to even just say 2 when you're writing equations. So your m value is 2. What's your b value? Where does it cross the y-axis? Crosses at -4. So now that you know that your m is 2 and your b is -4, what's your equation? So the answer here would be y equals 2x minus 4. Moving on, number 8. Once again, write an equation. What are the two things that we need? You need the m and the b. You need an m and you need a b. Those are the two things that you need. So by the end of today, I want you to always think, what are the two things you need? You need m, you need b. So you read what they give you. Hopefully they give you the m and the b. That way you could just write your equation. It says that it crosses the x-axis at 4 and does not cross the y-axis. Let's get a visual. So there's my xy plane. And let me graph this line. It crosses the x-axis at 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. It crosses right here. It says it does not cross the y-axis. So what kind of line do we have if it does not ever touch the y-axis? Horizontal or vertical?
Vertical.
Vertical, right? So here's my line. It has to be going perfectly up, perfectly down in order for it to never touch the y-axis. So you got to read, you got to understand, you got to visualize, and now you got to think M and B, but the problem is it doesn't cross the y-axis ever. And that's what B is. It's telling us where it crosses the y-axis. But we know it doesn't. It doesn't cross the y-axis, so we cannot find a B. And the slope is technically undefined because it's straight up and down. So right here we are not able to write it in slope-intercept form. This is one of those rare moments where you can't write it in y equals mx plus b form. But we do know that vertical lines, what do they look like? Anybody remember from a while back? X equals whatever your x value is, which in this case is 4. So there's your equation. It's not in slope-intercept form, but it is an equation that will produce that vertical line crossing the x-axis at 4. Hopefully you guys remember that. So it's really simple. When you have x equals a number, it's a vertical line crossing the x value at that number. So if I said x equals -2, that's the equation. Oh, it's going to be a vertical line crossing the x-axis at -2. If I say x equals 2, oh, that's a vertical line crossing the x-axis at 2. Now if I switched it to y, let's say y equals 3, oh, that's a horizontal line crossing the y-axis at 3. Say y equals -1. Oh, that's a horizontal line crossing the y-axis at -1. So those x equals a number or y equals a number, those are either horizontal or vertical lines. It's pretty easy, pretty straightforward. Number 9, write the equation of a line that crosses the y-axis at -1/2 and does not cross the x-axis. Let's get a visual. So there's my xy coordinate plane. It crosses the y-axis at -1/2. So it's halfway down to -1. That's where it's going to cross. And it says it does not cross the x-axis. So we're talking about a line that's perfectly parallel to the x-axis. It's running side to side. That's horizontal. That has no slope. So you could, this one does have a b value. It has a b value of -1/2. And it has the m value of 0. So the m value is definitely 0 because it doesn't rise. It's just totally flat like the floor. It has no slope, it has no steepness. The b value, it does cross at -1/2. So you can use y equals mx plus b. Y equals 0x plus b plus -1/2, or just -1/2. Now, of course, the better equation would simply be y equals -1/2. You don't need the 0x right there, okay? Or again, the shortcut is if it's a line running flat, it's going to be y equals that y-intercept value. So if I had a line running up here crossing the y-axis at 2, that would be the simple equation y equals 2. If I had a horizontal line crossing the y at -2, that would be the simple equation y equals -2. Now if it's vertical, it would be x equals +2 or x equals -2. Do we understand that?
Yes.
One person, all right. Number 10, thank you, 2 people. 3, 4, 5. Number 10, find the m of the line that passes through -1, -3, and 1, 1. Once again, that's a slope formula. There's the equation. We have 2 points. Let's label the first point x, y, 1, 1, representing the first point. Let's label the second one x2, y2. And now let's plug it into our formula by doing the division and the subtractions first. And now let's plug in our actual y2 value, which is 1, our y1 value, which is -3, our x2 value, which is 1, and our x1 value, which is -1. And we do it this way so we could clearly see the minuses changing to plus. So we end up with 4 over 2. So our slope is really what? 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2. Okay, number 11. Find the value of A when B equals -2, C equals 3, and D equals -5. So it's simply asking you to plug in values. So A is right here. They want you to plug in -2 for B and 3 for C plus D, which is negative 5. So PEMDAS, negative 2 times 3 is negative 6. Negative 6 plus negative 5, that will give you a negative 11 as your final answer of A. So A in this case is negative 11. Let's do the same for the last one. Anybody has done number 12 already? What's the answer for number 12? Anybody? 13. Okay, so again, let's just substitute. We're plugging in the A value is negative 2 equals the B value is 3. The C value is negative 5. Put it in with parentheses so you could remember to multiply. The D value we don't know. So let's work it out. You're going to have negative 2 equals negative 15 plus D. So the final step would be to add 15 and add 15. And you will get the final answer D equals 13. Great. Now it's time to move on to the actual notes part of today.